And this is Tabletop Cinema's first playthrough of Dagon by H.P. Lovecraft, Take 1. I wonder if I should make that a thing. Welcome to Tabletop Cinema, where we bring together the worlds of filmmaking, tabletop role-playing, and video games. I'm your host Mikey, a freelance filmmaker, tabletop RPG game master, and variety streamer on Twitch. And today, we will be playing Dagon by H.P. Lovecraft. Crass. He is a crass man. Dagon by H.P. Lovecraft is a 3D narrative adventure, an adaptation of the short story of the same name. It is free on Steam, and it is about 30 minutes long. But we're going to take our time. We're going to take our time and experience this. And full transparency, I'm not familiar with the myth. I'm not familiar with Lovecraft's works. My only exposure to it being the Call of Cthulhu tabletop RPG from Chaosium. So this will be my very first time experiencing Dagon. So I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, the back rooms, it connected to the SCP Foundation. Vanoa here introduced me to like the SCP Foundation. We had a whole week, which is like a bunch of like SCP stuff, and SCP has never stopped haunting me. So then Fisher suggested the back rooms, which is supposed to be like super scary. Like Zen was here, and Zen was saying earlier that like he'd nope out of it because the back rooms games are like super scary. And yes, Scarlet Hollow, if you like visual novels, I would also very highly recommend Scarlet. I played the first episode of Scarlet Hollow. It is free. The first episode is free. It's also spooky, but I think so far it's like spooky wholesome. Vano would probably tell you more, but it is a narrative adventure, and I really enjoyed the first episode. Warning, it is in early access, but Vanua does say that episode 1, 2, and 3 are fully playable, yes, and there will be 7 episodes total, but it's supposed to be very worth playing, even if it's not done yet. Mortuary Assistant is also something that I've seen pop up a lot on streams, and Zen, of course, is also like, Mortuary Assistant and Backrooms? Nope. So I've been looking for something that'll really, really scare me, because I do not do well with horror, alright? Jump scares scare the shit out of me. But like actual like fear and dread. Mortuary Assistant might actually make me feel uneasy if I really want to go for it. But right now we are going to play Dagon. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hook this onto the game now. Third episode also ends with an interesting cliffhanger. Yeah. You were mentioning, it's like whoa, Dagon in VR mode. Oh right, it does have VR support. Well, I get motion sick easily, so nah. Have I really? Well, it's really less scary if I'm playing it on the stream with chat. It's only the jump scares that, you know, there's no defending against jump scares for me. All right, game capture. You can hear that, right? That's already spooky as hell. Lowering the volume a bit so it won't be overwhelming. Shifting to game capture. It is not showing up yet. Aha, Dagon. See you around, and thank you for dropping by, San Tagoy. We're about to begin. And again, thank you so much for the raid and the follows, everyone. Let's check our options here. We have resolutions done. We have high shadows, high anti-aliasing, full screen VSync motion blur. If I uncheck this, will it be a borderless window? Nope, it is. It has an ugly border on top. Sounds, voiceovers, other. Invert y-axis, thank you. Each game needs this. Controller vibrations, should I play this with a controller? Nah, it's a first-person game. I might get annoyed. Trivia. Oh. I guess we unlock trivia. Well, thankfully for us, Vanua, I don't think there are any jump scares here. I have just not been able to experience a good translation of, the little I know of the Cthulhu mythos. Dagon is a faithful interactive adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's work, focused on story and atmosphere. You will not find difficult choices, action sequences, or inventory management here, and movement is limited to progressing through locations along with the plot.
I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more.
During the game, you will encounter interactive elements. Some of them will allow you to continue your journey, others reveal interesting facts about the original short story, its historical background, and the author. Some of the trivia is hidden. In order to find these secrets, focus your eyes and look for the Elder Sign. Oh, I know that. Man, okay, I can imagine this in VR. I can imagine now, like VR, and I grab for the bottle. I reach for the bottle. Here we are again with laudanum. Okay, let's unlock this. Oh. Is my head blocking it? Lovecraft's letters. As to letters, my case is peculiar. I write such things exactly as easily and as rapidly as I would utter the same topics in conversation. Indeed, epistolary expression is with me, largely replacing conversation, as my condition of nervous prostration becomes more and more acute. I cannot bear to talk much now, and am becoming as silent as the spectator himself. My loquacity extends itself on paper. H.P. Lovecraft to Reinhard Kleiner, December 23rd, 1917. Throughout his life, Lovecraft penned around 100,000 letters to his friends and fans, out of which about 10% survive to this day. But his tendency to endlessly correspondence was a relatively late growth. In youth, I scarcely did any letter writing, thinking anybody for a present was so much of an ordeal that I would rather have written a 250-line pastoral or a 20-page treatise on the rings of Saturn. Selected Letters, 1929 to 1931. Lovecraft would often skip meals to afford postage. Collections of his correspondence have been published in various books, and Selected Letters can be found online. Some readers consider them his most important legacy. You can read the discovered trivia immediately or go back to them later in the main menu. Turn off displaying trivia if you find that the feature distracts you from the story. I think it's distracting. This can be changed anytime in the options. I feel like I want to consume the trivia after we experience it. It feels like a director's commentary is on. So it's like I'm immersed in the story and then I jump out of the story because facts are being delivered to me. So I think for this playthrough, we're just gonna just go through the experience. Find the trivia, unlock the trivia bits, but I'm gonna read the trivia after. We're gonna experience Dagon for the first time uninterrupted by, director's commentary. And then suddenly, the game ends right away. Well. This will be so much easier to look around in VR. So it's a room scale VR kind of game.
Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below. Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death.
Elder Sign is trivia, right? That advances the story. That's trivia. I'll check it out. Like, what's the... Oh, I have to go to the main menu for the trivia. It's fine. We're just gonna experience the short story narrated to us. Now I remember psychological stuff that does scare me. Weird theory stuff, like, have you heard about the theory of that our lives are cyclical like a movie on repeat, and after dying we just start over again forever? Dawn to infinitely repeat same stat. And the thing is, we never even know, right? It's like, yeah, okay, we're repeating things, but we'll never know that we're repeating things. It's oxen free! No! Ah, oxen free. Cannot wait for the sequel.
It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider.
Okay, I can imagine this being a better VR experience. Better as a VR experience.
The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation.
I'll try using my controller. Controller, please connect. Controller, why you fail me? No, controller. Oh, there we go. Whew. Cool. So we get some smooth camera movement, right? Let's get some cinematography in. The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation.
So that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners.
So I got trivia from that. So it's like a slideshow, basically.
So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors, that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone in a small boat with water and provisions for a good length of time.
You're super limited. This is basically a slideshow, I guess. But hey, I'm hearing the story for the first time.
When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight.
Road to the moon, I guess. There are no elder signs here.
The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land. But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue. The change happened whilst I slept. Its details I shall never know. For my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous.
We're just imagining things.
When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see, and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished. For there was in the air and in the rotting soil a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core. The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish and of other less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity.
I can imagine now, like, not having visuals tied to this and just reading it for yourself. Or listening to the narration without the visuals. I'm thinking actually the visuals might be taking away from the experience.
There was nothing within hearing, and nothing in sight, save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet.
Yeah, imagine looking around this in VR.
As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths. So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might. Nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things. For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens. As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time. That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue. On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal.
Yeah, how scary our own minds will make it, and exactly. Like those descriptions, I could just imagine it already, or try to imagine those descriptions.
All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert.
Yeah, but I can see how much more intuitive this would be in VR. Like looking around.
That night, I encamped, and on the following day still travelled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it.
Ugh.
By the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance. An intervening valley setting it out in sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill. I know not why my dreams were so wild that night, but ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain, I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more. Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again. And in the glow of the moon I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day. Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence. I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me. But I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon, whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine. I felt myself on the edge of the world, peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night. Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost, and of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined. Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent, whilst after a drop of only a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual. Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath, gazing into the Stygian deeps where no light had yet penetrated. All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me. An object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon. That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself. But I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature. A closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express. For despite its enormous magnitude and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith, whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures. Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist's or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely.
Man, I don't think my screen was aligned this whole time. No wonder the subtitles are being cut off.
The moon, now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm, and revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope. Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the Cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures. The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me and unlike anything I'd ever seen in books, consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like. Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world, but whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean-risen plain. It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound. Plainly visible across the intervening water on account of their enormous size were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a Doré. I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men, though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto, or paying homage at some monolithic shrine which appeared to be under the waves as well. Of their faces and forms I dare not speak in detail, for the mere remembrance makes me grow faint. Grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer. They were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips, glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seemed to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background. For one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale represented as but little larger than himself.
Oh.
I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size, but in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe. Some tribe whose last descendant had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born. Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing whilst the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me. Then, suddenly, I saw it. With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters. Fiend-like and loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith, about which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. I think I went mad then. Of my frantic ascent of the sloping cliff and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little. I believe I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing. I have indistinct recollections of a great storm sometime after I reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard pearls of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods. When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital. Brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean. In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention. Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing. Nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe. Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god. But soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries.
Yeah, I was just seeing like, oh, Necronomicon. That's why there was a thing there. Like a trivia. Elder sign. What are you staring at? I'm not mad. See, in COC terms, that is like a bout of madness. Just seeing it, you
It
roll
is
for
at night,
madness.
especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing. I tried morphine,
Oh, it's like that SCP now.
but the drug has given only transient surcease and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave. So now I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men.
Yeah. Damn. Just like that.
Often, I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm. A mere freak of fever as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man of war. This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering on its slimy bed, worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite. I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down into their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind. Of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium. The end is near. I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it.
I didn't end it yet? Or is this the way I die? Fine, I shall face it.
It shall not find me. God, that hand! The window! The window!
Oh. That's why That's what happens. That is it. We hope you enjoyed immersing yourself in our little pool of cosmic horror. We'd appreciate it if you took a moment to rate Dagon and check out our other games and DLCs. So there is a little glass bottle DLC, which is apparently a short story written by Lovecraft when he was 7. But yeah, I actually think definitely reading it would have been so much more terrifying. I think you're right, it's so difficult to translate Lovecraftian horror because a huge part of it is done by it's the fear of the unknown, our own mind putting images to the words. But the moment you like demystify it feels very demystified. Like showing it as a slideshow like this with visuals and showing the creature itself, their interpretation of it. It externalizes the threat and externalizes the fear, I think. So it didn't have much of an impact, but the writing itself, I found like, wow, that is actually quite poetic. Like a very, very, like I think very poetically terrifying. And I imagine like if I experienced it without seeing any visuals, if I was just curled up in the dark with one small lamp and reading this like decades ago, like when was this written, right? I would absolutely be terrified. But here it's like, oh, it's 3D graphics and an awkward animation for Dagon, and you know, it's like, yeah, like I played the official Call of Cthulhu game, and I think it also suffered from that. Why, you're right. It's just that I don't think there's really any way to really translate it with, I don't know. I have not played a game yet that has fully translated it. Like maybe those point and click adventures, the official Call of Cthulhu point and click adventures. I don't know if those were scary or not, or if they translated the mythos well. But yeah, of course, I love the writing of it. Like I've never read a Lovecraft story before, but I can see why with just this short story, the kind of terror it can conjure in your mind's eye, not as a game. So most of Lovecraft's stories are told in the way where the person writing is already insane when he starts writing, so that you might not believe him. Okay, the unreliable narrator, or the person writing it. Yeah. Best way I would think would be text-based game with choices. Yeah. You know what? Actually, what kind of came close in For Travelers, the game we just played before this, it may not have been Lovecraftian inspired, but there was that pervading sense of unease because I think of the low res, the low fidelity sprite, you know, the low fidelity old school point and click adventure style. Because that doesn't exactly translate, you know, your mind still has to do some work. It's like kind of a visual interface above, like, you know, you have text-based adventure. So it's like a text-based adventure with some visual layer over it, but not to the level of let's fully interpret your madness through like a high fidelity, high res monster of the week kind of slideshow. But For Travelers was an interesting experience because, yeah, there was no voiceover. You're just reading it, and the tech and the art was not totally decipherable. That you only got an impression of the creatures, an impression of the characters. That things seemed a bit larger than life, and I could tell that it could be unnerving. Like the when we were in the Upside Down, and when the ritual was going on, if they pushed that narrative a bit further, I think they could have actually elicited some unease and a descent into madness and insanity. Zen, thank you for dropping by and lurking. You fall asleep at the table once, I'm heading to bed. Good night, Zen. It's also about time you wrap up. I'm not going to be staying up until 6 again, but I'm glad I extended and got to finish this and get it out of the way. Now I feel ready to play Call of the Sea. It's not totally related, but Call of the Sea is a very pulpy, you know, like, there's a way, like, okay, Lovecraftian Cthulhu mythos, you could also go the pulp adventure route. That's why there's actually a system called Pulp Cthulhu. So it's more in the vein of, like, you know, a pulp novel. The Shadow, Rocketeer, Indiana Jones, capturing that pulpy spirit. Hell, like Lovecraft was in pulp magazines before, right? But here you go, you get to like, it's very adventurous. It's not exactly trying to terrify you. It's just the mythos is the backdrop to the mystery, but it's more like swashbuckling adventure and all that. So Call of the Sea, I think, is kind of like that. It's a puzzle-based kind of narrative adventure, and we're just trying to find our husband who got lost on an expedition. And there's a lot of, terrors of the deep kind of thing, but the colors are very vibrant. So yeah, it's a very pulpy adventure, and I might play that over the coming months. So let me check this. World of Horror. Let me just close this first. Hello, Ditzy. I'm not sure if you were lurking this whole time, but welcome in. I guess this is a pattern we have established, Ditzy. We have just finished our playthroughs of If on a Winter's Night for Travelers and Dagon. Both are free on Steam. I do recommend checking them out. Dagon actually... Alright, I think, I don't tend to be harsh on things, but if you have never read the Dagon short story before, I really think you should read it first. Like, don't play this game yet. Like, the visuals took away a lot of it from me. A lot of the experience from me. In fact, at some point later on, like, I think you may have noticed, I looked around less in the environment, and I was just trying to fast forward to the next. Like, I was just focusing on the narration. The narration is great. I love the voice actor. I'd actually imagine... Actually, you know what? I just, like, if I close my eyes, and then if it auto-played the audiobook, I would have enjoyed this narrator. And I would have, like... it is good. Like, I like the narration, and I think it would have been better if I just closed my eyes and listened to the narration. But yeah, we just finished Dagon and If on a Winter's Night for Travelers. Both are free. So we're gonna be wrapping up the stream. Again, thank you for the raid, and thank you for hanging out, everyone. I'm always so appreciative of your company, especially the regular faces coming in. I'll have a look at these games. Let's put together something for the week. World of Horror. What is that? What is World of Horror? No, thank you for your presence. Okay, this thing comes up a lot. This thing comes up a lot in... I had to Google. I Googled last week, like, what are the scariest games on PC? And Outlast kept coming up in lists. That's why Outlast and Amnesia, those things kept coming up. But this, like seeing just the previews, you'd think, how can this be scary, right? Like, when I'd see something like this, I wouldn't expect it to be scary. But we may be onto something when we're thinking about how, Junji Ito, amazing horror artist and everything, but it's not like fully animated. It's not fully there, right? And our head, it fills in the blanks for the rest of it. It fills in what it may sound like, what it may truly look like, what it may smell like. Like, these are the things that they may be described to us through text, but not necessarily perceived by our own senses. So there's that gap there that really allows for the terror to sink in. So I'm actually curious. Like, I'm not terrified at all just looking at these previews, looking at the trailer, but actually playing it, I might actually freak out. However, it is in early access. I've been trying to avoid buying early access games. I want to play like the full finished package of things, as finished as it can get. But I'm curious, why is it early access? The early access version offers 12 mysteries to solve, with 200 encounterable events and 5 main characters. Wow. So there are even stats and stuff here. We consider the current state of World of Horror to be a pre-release that might not function as expected. 5 randomized... and it's randomized too. So this... I don't know if this will take away from the horror. But the people I heard who have played this, like here, a couple of my friends who play... Oh, you're here. You also played it, Fisher. But my friend, like Space Pulp, I remember him like bringing this up before. Huh. So There's that. And what is the other one you recommended? Highlands Deep Waters. Highlands Deep Waters. Oh, okay. Just text. Now this would be literally like me reading an ebook. So much text. Like life and suffering of Sir Brant. I'm still holding off on that because that is just all reading. Vampire the Masquerade had something like this actually, I think. And we saw a couple of horror games like this also. Yeah, I'm sure these can be terrifying if it's well written. But I must say, like, I've only seen Lovecraft stories quoted, but to actually at least hear Dagon, the short story in full, that was very vivid. Very vivid. Like, my mind was actually taking over the visuals of the screen. Which is why I was kind of disappointed. Like, it felt like the visuals fell short. It's like, it's too soon for visuals to be able to translate, or it's impossible to truly translate the experience, the Lovecraftian mythos. So my head was actually taking over at that point. Anyway, yeah, that was pretty cool. I did like how it's written. I'm not a horror connoisseur. I've not read like Stephen King. I've not read a lot of, well, even like others who've written within the Lovecraftian mythos, other authors, not just Lovecraft. I've not read those either. So I have nothing to really compare it to. Like the Yellow King is written by someone else, and that is also highly regarded. Who is the author of the Yellow King? Robert Chambers. See, like stuff within the mythos, the Cthulhu mythos, and the pantheon of authors there. I have not read anything, so I can't say. Like, is Lovecraft overrated? I know we can all agree he's controversial and he was a real asshole when he was alive, but as an author, a lot of his biases and prejudices, of course, come out in the writing, which can be a source of the horror itself, at least the way he tries to interpret it. But overall, it's just looking at it on a surface level, like all of that. That was really poetic. That is really poetic. Something you always told when I was younger, when I was watching horror movies with my parents, is that I should never close my eyes while watching because I'll freak myself out more. Yeah, that does make sense, Fisher. But I remember when I was a kid and I went on this Indiana Jones roller coaster ride, the only way I could save myself from being too scared was to close my eyes. Maybe it's because of all the jump scares of that roller coaster. I don't know. 340,000 word interactive horror novel. Very interesting. While investigating a murder in a small Scottish town, you'll find yourself embroiled in a world of secrets, cultists, and abyssal horror. What are you willing to do to solve the case? And what will you do when you don't like the answer? That said, though, I actually still would recommend you play the Call of Cthulhu game. The most recent official adaptation of the TTRPG. It's actually a decent game. Like, it's not totally terrifying, but I did like the vibe of the Call of Cthulhu game. I like the line, play as a male, female, gay, or straight. Is that here? Ooh, the Abyssal ones treat everyone just the same. Yeah, you're gonna go mad. Well, whoever you are, you're gonna go mad. I might still put it there for reference. If you want to read a great story from Lovecraft, then you should read Mountains of Madness. Oh, man. Yeah. I do have the board game. Eldritch Horror is a fun board game, and I have the Mountains of Madness expansion. Lovecraft was an asshole, but towards his later years, he did realize he did have a lot of mental health issues. Like he was very, very troubled individual, very troubled. And considering him being a product of the times, like he wasn't unique in his biases and prejudices, right? It's you understand that it was the 20s and someone who was as disturbed as he was, yeah, that I was not familiar. Like I wasn't familiar with the latter life or his later letters explaining that, like trying to get better. I'm actually not that familiar with it. Just that he is indeed controversial. You feel mentally comfortable. What is that about? Is that a term in the game? Did you also recommend something else? What is this? Oh, you linked it. Highlands Deepwater. Very close way to get the same fear into someone. Sorry, I think I missed that. Yeah. Was a pretty racist even by 20th century. Yeah, he got a problem with his friends. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm Filipino, and I remember he depicted, well, brown people, tribal people, and he made them savages. He made them the terror. So, well, we were all savages and barbarians to these people. But yeah, I think that's all I got for you today. I am still curious about this Scorn, but it is super mixed. But I am curious because it reminds me of like Alien, and just something unnerving about it. Like I can't place my finger on it. I cannot place my finger on it. But there, it is unsettling. I'm actually wondering why. Like looking at these, what makes something like it's a very familiar aesthetic. Like it looks like the precursors in Alien, but I'm wondering like why. What makes it so unnerving? It's not the body horror, not really. No. Like you could say it's Alien, but I don't know. You see this in sci-fi. Anyway, it's interesting. Like I'm these triggers that trigger our instincts to be afraid or to, it's fascinating sometimes. Biopunk staff. Innsmouth was supposed to be a half-breed town. Yeah, half-breed town with everyone with the guilds and everything, right? Yeah. All right. So I'll keep everyone posted as to what we'll be doing, but thank you for being on the stream. Let me check if anyone I know is like streaming right now. Again, I'm at odd hours on a Sunday. Oh, we have Den Mother. However, I feel like Den Mother's already almost done. Yeah, she's like 7 hours into their stream. Anyway, I'm gonna take a break and rest, and I'll keep everyone updated as to what we're going to do over the week. Definitely, Potionomics will be one of the games over the week. As for the horror stuff, stay tuned. I really wanna. It feels weird. Like I really wanna get scared. Like we played a lot of wholesome, Halloweeny visual novels. I don't regret it. Like I loved it. Oxenfree, Beacon Pines, Stories Untold. Like those were super fun. But I just need this straight up like scare the shit out of me. Whatever, even if it's full of movie horror tropes. So I'm looking at Outlast. Because, hey, let's pick up a camera but get scared this time. So Tabletop Cinema, I think it's more on brand, right? We'll see. Mortuary I'm not getting because it's an early access. No, it's not an early access. Never mind. I'm wrong. Never mind. I don't think I'm ready for that yet. Outlast seems more my jam. All right. Thanks everyone. For anyone who may be lurking, if you enjoy this content and want to keep up with the channel, please consider hitting that follow button. It really will help us out a lot. And checking us out on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Our Discord is also open 24/7. And I have a lot of people to thank. Of course, Vano and Fisher always coming to the stream and really supporting it. I really appreciate your presence and support. Thank you for the new follows. Off stream, it's Water Jalone, Santagoy, and Hey Lavi, who came in with Rafi Graffiti. As always, I did shout out Rafi Graffiti. Rafi is a great artist. Rafi looks at games. If you're interested in seeing an artist dissect art styles of games and try to emulate it, and perhaps learn a thing or two about like, what compromises an art style, what maybe have gone into those influences, Rafi Graffiti delves into all of that. So go ahead and check out their channel. And that's all I got for you. As always, welcome to the table. Have a good one. I'll see you all for the next one. Bye-bye.